The pen was warm. She had held it for 11 minutes without writing, letting her palm heat the resin barrel. The Galactic Council chamber smelled of ozone and crushed star lily, the ceremonial fragrance of Keth tribunal spaces. The floor beneath her boots was pale veined stone, polished to a mirror finish that reflected the chamber's ceiling. 300 meters of carved void hung above her, designed so every delegate felt small. Elena did not feel small. Her chair sat on a lowered platform, 0.7 meters below the standard seating tier. The empty seats beside her, 7 of them, had once held humanity's coalition partners. The council had voted to remove those seats too, 847 to 3. Resolution 12,441. Elena had counted the days since that vote. 47. High Arbiter Sen read the verdict from a crystal tablet. His voice carried to 4,200 delegates across 312 species. Broadcast lived to 14,000 settled worlds. Humanity is found guilty of cultural contamination, technological recklessness, and violation of the non-interference doctrine. Effective immediately, all human settlements beyond Sol system are forfeit. All human vessels in council space are subject to seizure. Humanity is exiled to their birth system in perpetuity. The vote stands, 847 in favor, 3 opposed, 12 abstained. A murmur rolled through the chamber. Someone laughed. A delegate from the Vosk trade conglomerate, 3, rose up, his throat flaps fluttering with amusement. Another delegate, a young Keth attaché, projected a holographic banner above the human platform. A crude drawing of Earth behind bars. The chamber erupted. Elena counted the seconds. 14 seconds of sustained laughter before the arbiter called for order. She did not stand. She did not raise her voice. She uncapped the pen. Click. The sound was small against the noise of the chamber, but Elena heard it. She wrote 3 lines on a sheet of cotton paper. She folded it twice. She placed it on the armrest of her too-low chair. Then she stood. She adjusted her collar, straightening fabric that needed no straightening, a mundane gesture, a grounding ritual. She had done this 7 years ago, the first time she measured her chair against the standard tier. She had done it 6 years ago, the day she recommended installing the biometric panel on the eastern doors. For emergency protocols, the paperwork said, the council had approved it unanimously. They had not asked what kind of emergency she meant. She walked toward the eastern exit. The doors were 17 meters tall, carved from asteroid iron. They had never been closed during a session, not in 2,300 years of council history. Elena stopped at the threshold. She turned, she smiled. Not a threat, not a plea, the small, private smile of someone who has just heard a joke whose punchline arrives late. She pressed her palm to the biometric panel. The 17-meter doors began to close. The laughter stopped. The grinding of ancient iron filled the chamber like a second verdict. Elena did not look back. The part they still don't understand, that comes later, much later. 37 years, 4 months, and 11 days earlier, Director Amina Okonkwo filed the first contingency memorandum at New Accra Station. She was 43 years old. She had a brass-framed photograph on her desk, a woman in a nurse's uniform from 2041, her gray tan. The frame was already dented, dropped once during the first contact riots. Okonkwo typed the memo with 2 fingers, the way her mother had taught her. She did not use the station's voice-to-text. She did not save it to the cloud. She printed it on cotton paper and locked it in a physical safe. The council will eventually make a mistake they cannot undo, she wrote. We must be ready to let them. She died in 2112, never knowing if the door would close. The Wayfarer departed council station at 14:47 standard. Elena sat in the passenger cabin, the warm pen still in her hand. David Chen, her attaché, sat across from her. He was 26. He had said nothing since the verdict. His hands were folded in his lap. His knuckles were white. Elena opened a secure channel. 6 faces appeared on the screen, each in a different location. each holding a cup of something hot. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, 61, squinted at the camera from Titan Research Outpost. She held a chipped ceramic mug, a replica of one her grandmother had used in Hokkaido. Steam rose from it. Behind her, a hydroponics bay glowed green. "I have 17 ducks," she said. "Not hello, not status report. They live in the bay. I was worried I'd have to leave them." She smiled, the lines around her eyes deepening. "I won't." Commander Marcus Webb, 54, sat in a tin cup that had been dented by a micrometeorite strike 12 years prior. His coffee was black. His jaw was square and scarred from a mining accident on Kepler 442b. He said nothing. He nodded once. Agent Sarah Acaffer, 39, ate a piece of sourdough bread. She was 3 meters from a Keth surveillance node on Keth Prime, Sector 7. She chewed slowly. She did not look at the camera. She looked at the bread. "The oven still works," she said. "That's the important thing." Lieutenant Park Jae-hoon, 33, knitted, gray wool, row 847. He did not look up. His needles clicked. The sound was steady as a heartbeat. "The gate array is ready," he said. Click, click. Dr. Amara Osei, 45, held a brass-framed photograph. The same woman in the nurse's uniform. The same dent from 2041. "New Accra is secure," she said. Her voice was soft. She did not mention the 847 volumes of translated Keth legal code stacked behind her, each one in classical Mandarin, each one paid for with donations from human colonies that could barely afford rice. Captain Rosa Delgado, 67, drank chamomile tea. She had drunk chamomile every day for 11 years, waiting for this call. Her ship, the Shepherd's Crook, hung in the Uit cloud, dark and silent. "We're here," she said. That was all. Alina looked at each of them. 6 humans, 6 cups of hot liquid, 6 decades of waiting compressed into a single channel opening. "Operation Long Patience is now active," she said. "Phase 7, the door is closed." 6 nods, 6 sips. No one cheered. No one cried. Yuki Tanaka set down her mug and counted her ducks again. 17, still 17. David Chen finally spoke. 37 years, he said, not a question. 37 years, 4 months, and 11 days, Alina corrected. Since Director Okonkwo filed the first contingency memorandum, the council thinks they voted today. She paused. The pen in her hand was cooling now. "We voted in 2089. The data flowed in precise columns. Alina did not need to read it. She had memorized every number. 847 council delegates had voted for Exile, the same number as the rose in Park Jae-hoon's scarf. 14,000 settled worlds would lose human trade routes within 72 hours. 312 species depended on human-manufactured quantum relays. Technology the Council had classified as non-essential in 2154, then quietly adopted as infrastructure backbone. The relays hummed in 14,000 stations, 312 shipyards, 47 military outposts. The Keth had the manuals. They did not have the 37 years of undocumented adjustments, the inefficient workarounds, the oral tradition passed between human engineers who had learned to feel the relay's moods. 6 species had already filed formal protests against the verdict. Their delegations were blocked from speaking by procedural maneuvering. Alina knew the maneuver. She had written the procedural guide the Keth clerks were using. 37 years of hidden preparation included 12 deep space listening posts, 4 autonomous manufacturing clusters, 9,400 trained personnel, and 1 complete translation of every Keth legal code into classical Mandarin, preserved in 847 physical volumes at New Accra. 3 votes had opposed the exile. Alina knew all 3 delegates by name. She had sent each a single photograph. No message, no signature, just Earth at dawn taken from Luna orbit. She wondered if they understood yet. Ambassador Vethro of the Silen requested a private channel. Her vocal translator was cracked and repatched 17 times. hissing softly between words. She was elderly, her methane-breathing body wrapped in thermal insulation that made her look like a bundle of gray cloth with eyes. "You knew," Vethro said. "Not an accusation, a realization. The door, the biometric panel, you installed it knowing this day would come." "We installed it knowing the Council would eventually make a mistake they couldn't undo," Alina said. Vethro was silent for 11 seconds. Alina counted them. The same 11 seconds she had counted in the chamber, waiting for the laughter to stop. "The Silan have read your Magna Carta," Vethro said. "Your Nuremberg transcripts, your truth and reconciliation records." The translator hissed. "You do not build justice to use it once. You build it to survive the builders." She paused. The hiss filled the channel like static. "We will file for observer status, with your coalition, not the Council's." Alina felt something shift in her chest. A small movement like a door opening a centimeter. She did not show it. She adjusted her collar. "Thank you," she said. "Do not thank me," Vethro said. "Thank the ducks." Within 96 hours, 7 species formally requested alliance with the newly declared human sovereignty. The Silan came because Alina had sent them books. Dr. Tanaka had taught Silan children human poetry in a hidden signal buffer. The children had memorized the poems. They did not understand all the words, but they understood that someone had bothered to teach them. The Jor came because Marcus Webb had shared coffee with a Jor foreman in a mine the Council forgot existed. The coffee was terrible. The Jor could not taste it anyway, being silicon-based. But Webb had sat with him for 3 hours, talking about pressure gradients and the way rock remembered. The Jor had never been spoken to like a person. They remembered. The Keth dissident remnant came because 847 of their own had been exiled by the same system that now exiled humans. The number matched the vote. Park Jae-hoon noted this with a quiet laugh. Row 847 of his scarf complete. He started row 848. The Vosk outcasts came because Sarah Akafer had baked bread in a hidden oven and shared the smell through a ventilation shaft. The Vosk were religious minorities, persecuted for refusing trade orthodoxy. They had not eaten bread in generations. They wept at the smell. The luminous drift came because they were energy beings classified as phenomena rather than persons, and Amara Osai had argued for 3 days in a council subcommittee that they deserved the word "we." She had lost the argument. The drift had watched the broadcast. They understood what losing meant. The hollow came because their worlds had been terraformed by council decree, their archaeological sites buried under atmosphere generators. They brought maps, deep-time maps, maps of what the galaxy looked like before the Keth named themselves arbiters. The remainder came because they were 12,000 individuals from 43 species, stripped of citizenship for insufficient economic contribution. They came with nothing but each other. That was enough. They did not come for power. They came because someone had offered them a seat that was not lowered 0.7 meters. The coalition's first formal meeting occurred in a converted hydroponics bay on Titan. Yuki Tanaka's 17 ducks wandered between delegates, pecking at grains scattered on the floor. The Silan ambassador wore a scarf, gray wool, row 312, knitted by Park Jae-hoon during the voyage. Amara Osai's brass-framed photograph sat on the table, facing outward. No one asked whose it was. Everyone knew to leave it there. Alina watched them. A methane scholar, a silicon miner, a batch of political exiles, a religious minority, an energy being, a subterranean archaeologist, and 12,000 stateless souls. They drank hot liquids from dented cups and talked about quantum relays. It should have been ridiculous. It was not. The quantum relay failures began at 03:17 standard. Not all at once. A flicker here. A dropped packet there. The kind of thing that happened every day that human technicians had fixed without logging, because logging took time and the fix took instinct. The Keth had the manuals. They had the 14-step maintenance protocol printed in 3 languages filed in the Council archives. They followed the steps, 1 through 14, in order, by the book. The relays did not respond. By 06:42, Sector 7 was dark, not destroyed, just silent. A silence that spread like a stain, station by station, because human engineers had spent 37 years learning the relay's moods, their quirks, the way they hummed differently when a solar flare was coming, the way they sighed when the load was too heavy. The Keth had documentation. They did not have the feel. A Keth maintenance supervisor opened a relay housing. He stared at the wiring. It looked correct. It was correct by the manual. But there was a loop here, a bridge there, a color coding that did not match the official schematic. Inefficient, the manual would have called it. Non-standard. The supervisor did not know that this inefficiency had prevented 17 catastrophic failures in the last decade alone. He did not know because no one had written it down. No one had written it down because the humans had known the council would eventually ask for the manuals. The Vosk trade conglomerate filed for bankruptcy. The delegate who had laughed in the chamber, whose throat flaps had fluttered with amusement at humanity's exile, now sat in a darkened office while his accountants explained that 47% of his shipping routes relied on human-navigated slipstream calculations. The algorithms existed. They were beautiful, elegant, stored in the council's central data core. They could not account for the feel, the micro-adjustments, the way a human navigator looked at a star field and knew, without calculating, that the slipstream was about to shear, the way they smelled ozone before the sensors registered it, the way they heard the ship's hull sing when the angle was right. The Vosk had the math. They did not have the song. 47% of their fleet went dark in 6 hours. Not destroyed, just sitting in space, waiting for instructions that no longer worked because the instructions had always been incomplete. The humans had filled the gaps with instinct, with tradition, with stories passed between pilots in bars on stations the council never visited. The Vosk delegate who had laughed sent a message to council station. It was marked urgent. It was placed in a queue. The queue was managed by a human-designed algorithm that had been classified as non-essential in 2154. High Arbiter Sen received a package. It was small. It was wrapped in plain paper. It had no return address, no tracking chip, no customs declaration. It had been hand-delivered by a Silen courier who had walked through 3 security checkpoints without speaking a word. Inside, a single sheet of cotton paper, folded twice. Sen unfolded it. He recognized the handwriting. He had watched her write it, 11 minutes after the verdict while the chamber laughed. 3 lines. Now translated into 312 languages, each translation smaller than the last, packed into the margins, crawling up the edges, filling every blank space until the paper was heavy with meaning. You have voted on our location. You have not voted on our relevance. The door closes both ways. Sen read it twice, then a third time. The paper was warm as if it had been held in someone's hand for a long time. He dropped it on his desk. He did not call for security. He did not issue a statement. He sat in his elevated chair, in the chamber with the 300-meter carved void, and he listened to the silence where human laughter used to be. The council convened an emergency session to reconsider the exile. They sent summons to every delegate. They reserved the main chamber. They opened the 17-meter doors, the ones that had never closed in 2,300 years, now hanging open like a mouth that could not stop speaking. Less than 3,000 delegates attended. The Silen did not come. The Jor did not come. The Keth dissident remnant did not come. The Vosk outcasts did not come. The luminous drift could not be seated in a physical chamber anyway, but they sent a message, a pulse of light that translated to a single word: busy. The Hollows sent a map. It showed the chamber's location relative to their buried archaeological sites. The map was 900 years old. It was more accurate than the Council's current star charts. The remainder sent 12,000 signatures on a single sheet of paper. The paper was small. The signatures were smaller. Each one was a mark made by a hand that had once held citizenship. High Arbiter Sen sat in his elevated chair and looked at the empty seats. 4,200 seats, less than 3,000 filled. The 7 seats that had held humanity's coalition partners were still removed. The 0.7-meter lowered platform was still there. Alina Voss's chair was still there, the armrest bearing the faint impression of a folded piece of cotton paper. Sen did not call for a vote. He did not know what to vote on. The exile was already in effect. The problem was that exile had turned out to mean something different than the Council had intended. They had voted on humanity's location. They had not voted on humanity's relevance. And relevance, it turned out, was not a matter for voting. David Chen spoke for the first time in 16 days. He was sitting in the Wayfarer's galley, watching Alina review status reports. The pen was in her hand again. It had warmed back to body temperature. "They don't know about the ducks, do they?" he said. Alina looked up. She did not ask what he meant. She knew. "The Council," David said. "They don't know about the ducks, or the tea, or the knitting. They don't know anything that matters." He was right. The Council knew about quantum relays and slipstream calculations and legal codes. They knew about votes and procedures and seating arrangements. They knew that humans were non-essential. They did not know that Yuki Tanaka had named her ducks after her grandmother's friends. They did not know that Rosa Delgado drank chamomile because her mother had drunk it while waiting for a war that never came. They did not know that Park Jae-hoon knitted because his hands needed to move when his mouth could not. The Council had built a civilization on data. They had forgotten that civilizations run on stories. Alina capped the pen. "Click." "No," she said, "they don't." The Keth Dominion sent a formal request for negotiation. It was routed to a small office on Titan. The office had once been a storage closet. Now it held a desk, a chair, and a small heater that Yuki Tanaka had installed herself. The walls were covered in photographs of ducks. Yuki was making tea when the request came through. Chamomile. Rosa Delgado's blend, sent in a tin canister that had traveled from the Uit cloud. The water had just boiled. Her ducks had laid 3 eggs that morning. She had found them in the straw, warm and speckled, and she had smiled the same smile Alina had smiled in the chamber. She made the tea before answering. She poured 2 cups, one for herself, one for the delegate who was not there yet but would be. "Human Sovereignty Titan Office," she said into the calm. "This is Dr. Yuki Tanaka. I have tea, I have ducks, I have time. What do you have?" The Keth negotiator paused. He had prepared a speech about procedures and protocols and the proper channels for interspecies dialogue. He had not prepared for ducks. "I have a formal request," he said. "Good," Yuki said. "Formal requests go in the blue folder. Informal requests go in the green folder. Complaints about quantum relays go in the red folder, but that's full, so you might want to start with something else." The Keth negotiator looked at his notes. He looked at the empty room on his screen, where a small woman in a stained lab coat sat among photographs of waterfowl. He had been trained in 17 negotiation techniques. None of them covered this. "I would like to speak with Ambassador Voss," he said. "Ambassador Voss is reading names," Yuki said. "She's busy." "You'll have to wait." "Reading names." 9,400 names, Yuki said. "It takes a while. Would you like me to put you on hold? I can play duck sounds." The negotiator declined the duck sounds. He ended the call. He reported to High Arbiter Sen that the human sovereignty was non-compliant with standard diplomatic protocols. Sen read the report. He looked at the cotton paper on his desk, still folded twice, still warm. He did not laugh. Vethro filed the formal response to the Keth request. It was 9,400 pages long. It cited 37 precedents from human legal history. It cited 847 precedents from Scythian archives, the exact number of the original vote. And it included one photograph, appended without comment, Earth at dawn, taken from Luna orbit. The same photograph Alina had sent to the 3 delegates who had voted against Exile. The Keth legal team read it. They were the finest legal minds in the Dominion, trained in procedural law from the age of 4. They understood every citation. They recognized every precedent. They knew, with the certainty of professionals, that the document was airtight. They wept, not from defeat, from recognition, from the sudden, crushing understanding that a civilization they had dismissed as non-essential had spent 37 years learning their own system better than they knew it themselves, that the inefficient workarounds they had mocked were actually a parallel legal framework, built in the gaps of their own law, waiting for the day when the gaps became chasms. One of the lawyers, a junior clerk named Thesvan, closed the document at page 4721. She looked at the photograph of Earth. She had never seen a sunrise. The Keth homeworld had 2 suns, and their dawn was a gradual brightening, not a single edge of light cutting through dark. She touched the image. She wondered what it felt like to stand on a world with 1 sun and watch it rise. Then she went back to work. There were 4,719 pages left, and a photograph that needed no explanation. The fleets massed at Saul's Edge. 847 warships, the same number as the vote because the Keth Dominion appreciated symmetry. They hung in the dark, weapons charged, waiting for the order to advance. The order did not come. High Arbiter Sin sat in his chamber and stared at the cotton paper. The fleet sat in space and stared at Saul. And Alina Voss sat in a converted shipping container on Titan, reading names from a wall. The standoff lasted 11 hours. The same 11 hours Alina had spent holding her pen. The same 11 seconds Vethro had spent in silence. The same 11 years Rosa Delgado had spent drinking chamomile. At hour 12, Alina stood up. She walked to a broadcast station that Park Ji-hoon had built from spare parts in the hydroponics bay. The station was small. It was held together with tape and hope and a knitting needle that had been bent into an antenna. It worked. She opened the channel. 14,000 worlds listened. The fleets listened. The Keth listened. The ducks in the next room continued eating grain. Alina held the pen. It was the same pen from the chamber, the resin barrel darkened by 37 years of palm heat. She had held it for 11 minutes before writing the 3 lines. She had held it for 11 hours while reading names. She had held it while Vethro wept, and while Yuki made tea, and while David Chen finally spoke. She spoke 1 sentence. "We did not slam the door, we closed it. There is a difference. Learn it before you knock." She paused. The channel was open. 14,000 worlds waited. "The council thinks they voted on our location. They did not vote on our relevance. They never understood. We didn't need the galaxy to need us. We needed to know who we were without it." She looked at the pen. The resin was warm. It had always been warm. Humanity is not strong because we endured exile. We are strong because we spent 37 years learning what exile would cost, and then choosing to pay it anyway, so that, when the door closed, we were already home. She paused again. Somewhere in the Uit cloud, Rosa Delgado raised her chamomile tea. On Kepler 442b, Marcus Webb touched the dent in his tin cup. In a mind the council forgot existed, a Jor foreman felt something shift in his silicon core that he did not have words for. Alina capped the pen. Click. The fleets did not advance. The Keth did not knock, not that day. The Scythian child with the new translator held the brass-framed photograph. She was 7 years old, or the Scythian equivalent. Her name was a series of clicks and hisses that human throats could not form, but she answered to Veth because Dr. Tanaka had given her the nickname, and nicknames mattered. She did not know the woman in the photograph. She did not know about the first contact riots of 2041. She did not know about the dent in the frame, or the Greytant who had died in a hospital during a war over territory no one remembered anymore. She knew the frame was dented. She knew someone had carried it through a door and did not look back. She knew that when she held it, she felt something heavy in her chest that her new translator did not have a word for. The translator was uncracked. It was new. It had been a gift from the human sovereignty, delivered with a note that said, "So you can tell your own stories." Veth had not understood the note at first. She had thought stories were something you read from books. She was learning that stories were something you carried. 1 year later. The memorial was not a monument. It was a wall of names in the Titan hydroponics bay, where ducks still wandered and delegates still drank hot liquids from dented cups. The wall was made of recycled steel from decommissioned council stations. Each name was etched by hand, not laser, because Alina had insisted that hand etching took longer and that some things should take longer. There were 9,400 names. They were listed in the order the people had died, waiting for the council to make its mistake. The first name was a technician on Ganymede who had frozen when a relay failed in 2091. The last name was Director Amina Okonkwo, who had filed the first contingency memorandum in 2089 and died in 2112, never knowing if the door would close. Alina read them aloud. It took 11 hours. David Chen brought her chamomile tea every 47 minutes. He did not ask why 47. He knew the number had no special meaning, which was why it mattered. Some rituals did not need meaning. They needed only repetition. The Silan ambassador sat in the front row, her cracked translator hissing softly as she recorded every name in methane-compatible format. Her species did not have ears, not as humans understood them. But they had memory, deep and archival, and she was storing 9,400 human lives in a format that would outlast the Council's crystal tablets. Veth sat cross-legged on the floor, the brass-framed photograph in her lap. She traced the dent with one finger, over and over, while Alina read. She did not understand all the names. She understood that each one was a person who had waited, and that waiting was a kind of work. Yuki Tanaka's ducks wandered between the rows of seated delegates. One of them, a brown female named Hokkaido, pecked at Alina's boot during the 4,000th name. Alina paused. She reached down and scratched the duck's head. Then she continued reading. No one minded the interruption. Some things should not be rushed. When the last name was read, Alina touched the etching with her pen. The warm pen. The resin barrel, darkened by 37 years of palm heat, left a faint mark on the steel, not a signature, a warmth, a presence. She stood up. Her voice was hoarse, her collar was crooked, she did not adjust it. "This pen is warm because I held it too long," she said. "Because I was afraid in the chamber that I would speak when I should listen, that I would fight when I should prepare, that I would forget the difference between a door that slams and a door that closes." She looked at the wall. 9,400 names, 9,400 lives, 9,400 reasons to remember that patience was not weakness. "The council voted on our location," she said. "They did not vote on our relevance. They never understood. We didn't need the galaxy to need us. We needed to know who we were without it." She capped the pen, click. The sound echoed in the hydroponics bay. The duck stopped pecking. The Silan ambassador's translator hissed once, then fell silent. David Chen held his tea. It had gone cold. The classroom was in a converted shipping container. The ceiling was low enough to touch. 312 students sat on recycled crates, human and coalition, their knees bumping in the narrow space. They held tablets made from salvaged council screens. They wore clothes patched from old uniforms. They smelled of hydroponics and chamomile and the faint sulfur tang of Silan insulation. Alina stood at the front. She did not teach victory. She taught the pen. "This pen is warm," she said, holding it up. The resin caught the overhead light. "Not because it is special, because I held it too long, because I was afraid, because fear is not the opposite of courage. Fear is the material courage is made from." A human boy in the front row raised his hand. He was 12, maybe 13. His shirt was too big. It had belonged to his father, who had died in a relay accident on Sector 7. "What did you write?" he asked. "The 3 lines in the chamber, what did they say?" Alina smiled, the same smile from the threshold, small, private, the smile of someone who has heard a joke whose punchline arrives precisely when it should. "I wrote," she said, "you have voted on our location. You have not voted on our relevance. The door closes both ways." The boy frowned. "That's not very threatening." "No," Alina said. "It wasn't meant to be. Threats are for people who still need the door to open." She walked to the window. The shipping container had one window, a rectangle cut into the steel with a plasma torch. Outside, Titan's orange sky hung low and heavy. Beyond it, stars, thousands of them, millions. The same stars the Council looked at from their 300-meter chamber, wondering why the universe had gone quiet. "Humanity is not strong because we endured exile," Alina said. She was not speaking to the boy anymore. She was speaking to the wall of names, to the ducks, to the dented brass frame in Veth's lap, to the 9,400 who had waited and the 312 who were learning to wait in a different way. "We are strong because we spent 37 years learning what exile would cost, and then we chose to pay it, not because we wanted to, because we needed to know who we were when no one was watching." She turned back to the class. The boy was still frowning, but it was a thinking frown now, the kind that meant a door had opened a centimeter in his mind. "Your homework," Alina said, "is to find something warm, something you've held too long, something that scares you. Bring it tomorrow." She walked to the door. The shipping container door was 2 meters tall, not 17. It was made of recycled steel, not asteroid iron. It had no biometric panel. It did not need one. She stopped at the threshold. She turned, she smiled. Outside, 17 ducks crossed the hydroponics path. Their feet made small sounds in the gravel. A Silen child, her translator new and uncracked, held a photograph in a brass frame. She did not know the woman's name. She knew the frame was dented. She knew someone had carried it through a door and did not look back. Alina stepped through. The door closed behind her, not a slam, a click. The ducks kept walking. The child kept tracing the dent. The orange sky kept hanging low. And somewhere in a chamber with 300 meters of carved void, a Keth legal clerk named Thesvan touched a photograph of Earth and wondered what a single sunrise felt like.